Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stCenturyWire.com. We're also streaming out live on X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and hopefully BitChute as well. Some of the live streams that we're going on right now as we speak. This is episode 530 of this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program brought to you here on ACR. Got a couple of guests going to join us from the ACR team. We're going to be joined momentarily by our very good friend of the show, also co-host Bryan McClain, aka Hesher. You know him as host of the Boiler Room, also former TNT radio host at State of the Nation. He's going to be joining us, as well as Adam Ruckus Clark, also from ACR and also formerly of TNT Radio as well. We're going to be covering the big news this week, the New Orleans terrorist attack. I'm putting up the air quotes. We'll get to that later. And also the Las Vegas, the bizarre, I don't know what to call it. Let's call it a snafu. Las Vegas Tesla car bomb that wasn't a car bomb, that turned out to be a very strange event. Doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of static and noise going up in the information sphere, especially on YouTube and X. We're going to unpack some of that with Hesher, also with Ruckus as well. And also the kind of strange saga. I don't know what to call it, but Elon Musk is going crazy. Is kind of having a meltdown at the moment. Is calling for the dissolution of British Parliament. And now he's called for Nigel Farage to step down as leader of the Reform Party in the UK. So who knows what he's up to. And also he's calling to free Tommy Robinson from jail. So Elon Musk, strange. He's doubling down on pretty much everything that he's putting out. Who knows? Is anybody advising him? Does any of this make sense? Who knows? We'll unpack what Elon's up to there. Very strange indeed. But hopefully we'll make some sense of it for you and our audience. Hello to everybody in the 21st Century Wire chat room. Also, we're going live out on YouTube. Normally, we put an audio stream from Spreaker, who was our audio carrier before, but they're discontinuing the live stream. So the infinite wisdom of Spreaker's board, they decided to get rid of live streaming on audio. So genius move. A lot of people are fleeing Spreaker as a result. So congratulations, Spreaker, for a great technical move there. So we'll put the live YouTube stream up on our show page at 21stCenturyWire.com. And I want to also direct people to our account on X. And last night we did a space on X. It was very well attended. Kind of ran late, revealed New Orleans Tesla Psyop. We had Hesher on there. We had a number of great guests coming in. Ryan Dawson also joined us on that live stream. Benjamin Rubenstein is a producer for Kim Iverson as well. So some great people we had up on the panel, as well as Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, who I'm going to bring on stage right now, and Adam Ruckus Clark, who we're also going to bring up on stage just briefly. Hesher, thanks for joining us for this live edition of the Sunday Wire. Great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. It was disappointing to log in and hit that Spreaker link and see that indeed they were not streaming today. So big apologies to all of our people that have been listening to us on Spreaker for years. We're working in the background to try to find a replacement for that and get that up as soon as we absolutely can. But yeah, it's great to be here with you. That was a really interesting discussion last night on X, in the X space there, with you and the team. There it is on the screen there. If you want to go check it out, you can find it at 21Wire over there on X. It was a long show, but we had a lot to cover. And in the second half of it, it kind of veered into, some wider topics. Ryan Dawson was talking about Jeffrey Epstein and, everything. We had a long discussion about Tommy Robinson and all that. So it was a really informative evening.
Yeah, and it was great. So great space as well. And a big thank you to you and also Ben Rubenstein for hanging with us for that long stretch. I think people really appreciated it. And the numbers in the room kind of built up sort of after a couple of hours. And I think people really appreciated our analysis. I mean, what were we doing last night? Hesher. Well, the topic of discussion here, they'll bring it up on screen. Sunday Wire this week, New Orleans, the Vegas Tesla car bomb that wasn't a car bomb, that was quite a spectacle. But then the real fun begins in the information space. So we tried to unpack some of this and bring in some of our knowledge of mass shootings and also domestic terror events, which we've covered closely over the last 15 or so years. Hesher, and you've been right there in the trenches with us as well. Let's see if Ruckus can join us. We'll bring him up on stage. Ruckus, Adam Clark from the Daily Ruckus. So hopefully he's got his audio sorted out. You good, Ruckus?
I do. Everything is good. I'm just trying to sort out my OBS here, but everything's fine. Yeah, it's been an interesting, man, what a year it's been, and it's only been a few days, so it's only going to get wilder, unfortunately. But thanks for having me on the space yesterday. It was great to, get our heads together with so many great folks on that space, and there were a lot of great folks on that space, and I'm getting a lot of the listeners are great people too, so that was fantastic. And then thanks again for having me here to continue the discussion, sir.
So first of all, Hesher, what did you make of the talk last night? And let's tee up a couple of things that we want to get into for this discussion here on the Sunday Wire. But first of all, I'll go to Ruckus after you. But Hesher, your thoughts on the discussion last night, and then what do you think are some of the areas that you want to focus on today when we're talking about basically ostensibly a psyop? I think there's kind of a consensus. The New Orleans thing, I mean, it's just screaming false flag, screaming staged op a la San Bernardino in 2015 and so many others, Oklahoma City, etc. Then the Las Vegas thing on the same day, but so bizarre. And then the media reaction afterwards, especially in the alternative, I use the air quotes again, alternative mainstream podcasting circuit. I mean, just to me, a torrent of disinformation and propaganda, speculation, entertainment. I don't know what to call it anymore, Hesher. So that's where we left it on that discussion last night. I'll hand it over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, well, on the plus side, I would agree with what Ryan said when he joined the room last night. I absolutely love that nobody's buying this. Like across the board, almost nobody is buying this. Unfortunately, on the other side of that, a lot of people are buying the conspiracy candy, the alternative story, the sort of, not so meta, conspiracy theory that comes along with it, because I would refer to that as probably the government approved alternative narrative, which is basically that Al-Qaeda and ISIS have infiltrated the country through the open border, and that this is now the kickoff to what is going to be the norm. So that's the unfortunate part. So again, fortunate that many people see this event and they see the ginned up reporting and all of the anomalies and the things that don't make sense, and they say, hey, this doesn't make sense. So that's a win for Western society right there, because it used to be something like this would happen and we would come out and we would do exactly what we did last night and what we're doing today. And people would tell us we're crazy. They'd tell us we're not, we're anti-American. They'd tell us we're, all this stupid stuff. No one wanted to hear it, back when the Dra Muhammad thing happened, or when the San Bernardino attack happened, or Hebdo. I mean, you just go down the list. You pointed out last night that 2015 was a big hot year for stuff like that. So I love that we're no longer considered social rejects for pointing out the obvious. But there's a lot of people that appear to be new to that game. So they see that something's off, something doesn't smell right. They immediately know something isn't right. So, I mean, that's a plus. That's a good thing, I suppose. We've moved along a little bit, but I mean, with the Overton window getting, nudged and shoved to the right, every couple months, it's like, okay, we got to catch up now, though. You got to catch up, and you got to realize that this is not organic. This is not just an organic thing that happened because the border's open and because America's, paying for their dastardly imperialism. It's very unlikely that is the case, especially when you see 2, 3, 4 of these incidents happen within 48 hours, because there were a couple other incidents that didn't get as much coverage, but that were kind of in the same genre. So I'm very pleased that, people are leaning into their skepticism. That's sort of step one. And like you said last night, you have to be well informed, and being well informed is something that can take years. You've got books to read, you've got videos to watch, you got documentaries to watch, you got podcasts to listen to, you've got on the ground work you can do yourself. There's historical basis for all this stuff. So it takes a long time to build up to that level of being well read and having the knowledge to protect yourself from the predatory mass media. And that's kind of the tagline for Boiler Room. That's what we like to do over there. And we all do that in our own ways. Ruckus helps people navigate the shark-infested waters of the mass media, and we do the news omnibus here. So we've been focusing on this for a long time. So we have the skepticism, and we have the historical knowledge to go along with this. So for for listeners and viewers that you mentioned last night that may not have that yet, that's okay. Keep at it and lean into that skepticism, and don't fall into the trap of belief and belonging. That's really where you get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. So we're saying that use your own critical faculties, do your own critical thinking. I think it goes without saying that you got to be skeptical of anything that's coming from the mainstream media in terms of a narrative about a terrorist attack in the U.S. In the West, because so many times, and we're going to give you receipts today. Okay, we're going to show you absolute proof, irrefutable proof of federal government involvement in staging major domestic terror events. Okay, so this is like beyond debate. So why would has that policy suddenly stopped? And of course not. It continues, and they've been doing it for decades. So anyway, we'll get into that and how you can use some of those skills to translate what's you're looking at in New Orleans on the first, but also slightly more difficult. This one in Vegas with the Tesla car bomb at the Trump Hotel certainly ticks a lot of boxes in terms of politics and symbolism, but there's also a bit of chaos and quite a lot of misinformation and propaganda that's coming on the back end of it, and we're going to unpack that. Ruckus, what did you think, firstly, about the discussion last night? Is anything from that space that you thought you wanted to focus on more today, or any areas that have jumped out about these two incidents, and just broader discussion on this theme?
Well, as I often do, unfortunately, is I can't help but think about what's next. What's the whole point of all this? Is if either of these things, if any of these things in particular, the Cybertruck one is an actual quote unquote, air quotes, folks, psyop, why? Who gets what out of this? It really doesn't make any sense. I mean, it can't. I mean, I know there's some pretty wild conspiracies we could go down. I mean, like, I did see some of these big X accounts come afterwards. I don't want to name anybody, but the ones where they like, the Cybertruck saved Americans today. Elon, you should make this an ad for Tesla. And I'm like, what are you doing, people? This is ridiculous. And then, we have the usual suspects, large alternative, air quotes, media platforms suggesting that the person inside the Cybertruck, without us really knowing anything about them, who he really was, if it was this guy, they're a real American hero. So, we have all that going on. But I want to focus on more interested in what does this ultimately lead to? What does it mean? Who benefits at the end? Which stocks should I be investing in to profit off of this wildness? I'm just kidding. But that's what the people do. So, if you see suddenly, oh, wow, Elon Musk might be the ultimate benefactor of this at the end of the day, because, I did searches earlier today, and I was like shocked that there's hardly any actual, air quotes again, folks, news talking about the Cybertruck thing at all. And I'm like, all of it, 99% of it is coming from X. So I'm like, the X platform owns this psyop, so to speak. So if there's to be money to be had from the attention, and it is an attention economy, trust me, then Elon Musk is the ultimate winner, as so are all of his beneficiaries, the little Elon Musk sock puppet accounts. You know the ones, Patrick.
Yes, we'll talk about some of those sock puppets in a moment, but over to New Orleans. It's just like, here it is. That's the money shot there. An ISIS flag in the ground. I don't know if this is actually a real photograph. but this was put up by one of Elon's favorite accounts right afterwards. So I've not seen the source of this. Could be Photoshop, could be AI. Again, another problem with people putting unsourced material on X and calling it news. You are the media, says Elon. And so we have to sort of figure out where this came from. But as far as I can see at the moment, the first person I saw who put this up was Ian Miles Chong, a favorite account of Elon Musk. I'm still looking for it, where the provenance of this image is. I did not see that flag taken off the back of the truck where it was mounted in any of the other photos, but here it is. So we'll leave that for the moment. But there's the scene there, alleged perpetrator on the ground in Bourbon Street in New Orleans, wearing camo. We'll show you some of the anomalies around this briefly. But firstly, let's just talk about this New Orleans event. So the narrative here is clearly ISIS inspired. And also we have this bizarre New York Post journalist going in. We'll show that clip later as well, going in to basically spoil the crime scene at the apartment of the alleged perpetrator here. So we'll bring some of that information up briefly in a moment. But the first thing I'm looking at, and we talked about the methodology of the kind of daily shooter analysis that we developed over the years. But firstly, I'm looking to look at a number of things. I'm going to try to separate what can be confirmed with what is total speculation. And that's important because if you start speculating on the back of unconfirmed information, A, you're wasting time. And B, if you have a large audience, you're actually gaslighting your audience to send them down a rabbit hole based on an assumption that A, the person is who they say they are or who the media says they are, and B, were they actually driving the truck or the car? In this case, we do have some confounding evidence, even from the FBI's own release on this, that if this is actually indeed the same person. Very strange. But anyway, ex-Army, Fort Bragg connection. The same with the alleged victim or perpetrator in Las Vegas, Fort Bragg, active duty or veteran, I'm not sure, recently active, special forces. We have that. Plus, the Fort Bragg connection also extends to Ryan Ruth, the alleged or second Trump attempted assassination. Very strange character. So are all these people somehow involved in psychological operations at Fort Bragg? Legitimate question. So we're just throwing that out there. That's a commonality. What is not a commonality is the political symbolism or motivation MO behind each event. New Orleans is, to me, the most important one. And it's interesting how X is completely, and YouTube and the celebrity special forces podcast circuit is focusing on this you-know-what show in front of the Trump Hotel with the Tesla on fire. I'm going to call it a dumpster fire because that's exactly what it is. But New Orleans, to me, is more consequential because it's got the ISIS theme. You got a former Army vet who used to work for Deloitte. You know, it's a big 8 accounting firm. It's really strange. Totally not a profile of an ISIS person, right? So, but this matches the MO of San Bernardino in December of 2015. And just to refresh people's memory, this terrorist attack, this unlikely terrorist attack from the unlikely perpetrators, this couple, at the back end of Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Los Angeles bedroom community. I mean, completely strange, in a civic building that has no value in terms of politics or anything at all. The whole thing doesn't make sense. But that was deemed afterwards to be, quote, ISIS inspired. And you have to remember, the United States had not mounted a major intervention in the Middle East to fight ISIS up to that point. But because that was deemed as a domestic terror event, i.e. an ISIS attack on U.S. soil, that was the beginning of the legal trigger through the NDAA, authorization of military force, use of military force, AUMF, I think it is, and to deploy in Syria and Iraq to fight ISIS. It was literally that completely dubious and dodgy so-called domestic terror attack in San Bernardino in December of 2015. And then another commonality afterwards, CNN ransacked the apartment of the alleged bombers, the couple, just 24 hours or so after the event. It was the strangest, most bizarre thing. Rifling through their drawers, picking up their IDs. I mean, it's weird. It's almost like if that was a crime scene, it would immediately be spoiled, and you're tampering with evidence. You're contaminating the crime scene. So that led us to believe at the time that this was not a serious criminal investigation. This was not a serious counterterrorism investigation, i.e., they weren't seriously considering these perpetrators. So something else happened. We found out there was a multi-agency fusion drill on site that concluded, if I'm not mistaken, just 48 hours before I think this San Bernardino event took place. Hence, that's why you had 1,000 first responders on the scene within like an hour and a half or something, including like multiple mobile command centers. And it's just, the overkill on that, like so many of these events, was just ridiculous. But it was because there was a multi-agency fusion drill, terrorism drill, or whatever on site, pretty much. So all the assets were there. I mean, is that a coincidence? And so all these things were racking up. Coincidence, 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 more coincidences. And with New Orleans, I have not seen any evidence of a drill. That's one of the things, of course, we look for. We also look for whether the perpetrator is a lone wolf or is a known wolf. The difference between a known wolf and a lone wolf is a known wolf is on the radar. He was on the radar of the security services. He was on the radar of the FBI. Oh, the police knew about him, etc. Like so many of these other very odd mass shootings where they're known wolves. In other words, they're on the radar of the security services. So then that goes into the conversation of, oh, this was a cock-up. Oh, we should have done better. This was negligence on the part. We're going to have an internal investigation. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. We're going to have an inquiry. So in a way, that helps the government and that helps the agencies because it diverts the conversation away from a cover-up to a cock-up. That is a legit paradigm that you see everywhere. Associated with all sorts of events like this. So anyway, all those are some of my red flags. That's kind of my thought process with the daily shooter. Hesher, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, well, you know, it makes me think of the Uvalde school shooting also. That was another one that happened just on the outskirts of, you know, a ongoing PR/law enforcement initiative here in Texas, known as Operation Lone Star, which costs Texas taxpayers like I think like $23 million a year or something like that. And Operation Lone Star is sort of the PR slash, from my assessment at least, Operation Lone Star is the PR/law enforcement you know, wing for Greg Abbott here in Texas. And Operation Lone Star, those funds highly involved with a lot of the border shenanigans that we've seen in the last 4 years. And yeah, when that happened, when that event happened, you had I think it was like 130 or somewhere between 100 and 200 various law enforcement personnel there. You had Border Patrol, you had DEA, you had FBI, all these people there. All the different flavors of uniforms and acronyms you could imagine. Yet, you know, no one went into that building for 71 minutes. It was, you know, so again, you see sort of that happening right on the cusp, right on the edge of a big PR or military/law enforcement set of experimentation, or you know, something like this. I'm not exactly sure what you would classify Lone Star as, but I found that to be very interesting. And you mentioned the there's a couple things, Patrick. Number one, I have a question, actually. Maybe you guys can clear this up for me. After the New Orleans attack, I started seeing reports of people having been shot. And I'm still confused by this. Maybe I've just missed some of the mainstream reporting, and there's a gap perhaps in my understanding of the mainstream's perspective on this. But let me, if you could bring up my share tab here, let me play this video for you, and maybe you can unwrap the confusion or indulge in it with me. But here you go. This is Alabama woman shot during New Orleans terror attack, sharing her story.
Tonight, a Mobile woman who survived the terror attack in New Orleans is describing the horror and chaos she experienced on Bourbon Street. Alexis Scott Wyndham was shot New Year's Day. The bullet is still lodged in the 23-year-old's foot. NBC 15's Andrea Ramey brings us her survival story.
Alexis Scott Wyndham rang in the new year in New Orleans with 7 other friends from Mobile. The Blunt High School graduate says they were about to call it a night when Shamsuddin Jabbar barreled down Bourbon Street.
We heard something go boom, 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 and people were screaming, and I looked to the left, and a truck was coming down like the street, and he was halfway on the sidewalk too. He was just running people over like it was nothing.
She says the truck the terrorist was driving hit her and knocked her to the ground. At first, Alexis thought he ran over her foot, but as she tried to get up and run away, she saw blood pouring out. Her best friend FaceTimed with her mother, Trifina, who directed them to make a tourniquet with Alexis' sock to slow down the bleeding.
It was like a turn on switch. It's my baby. I gotta make sure she can be able to come home safe.
Alexis said Good Samaritans then took her and her friend to the hospital. As she got up, that's when she began to understand the gravity of what happened.
To my left and my right, 2 dead people. It was a man on the corner. He was shot, I think in the head. It was blood. His blood was just leaking. His eyes were open. They were still trying to help him, but it was too late. And the other person on the side, he was just laid down on the ground flat. He was just down. He wasn't moving or nothing. Then as I looked down the street, it was just bodies everywhere.
She says her friend, Brandon Whitsett, a Viger High School graduate, was also injured and is still in the hospital in New Orleans.
It's like the truck hit one whole side of him.
She says 2 of her other friends were also hurt, but not seriously.
How can you do this to people? How could you do this? That's just something I couldn't really wrap my mind. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'm sorry. I just think he's mental ill.
I'm just thankful. It could have been worse. Like when people was coming to the hospital, they were looking for their family members, and some of them weren't even there. They were dead. So they were just telling them like, sorry for your loss, and they would just bust out crying. So I couldn't do nothing but thank God that I only got shot in my foot.
Andrea Ramey, NBC 15 News.
So what is that? Is he mowing people over and shooting them in the feet outside the? I mean, they're not saying where the bullets.
Was he in the truck with the gun out there while he's going like 80 miles an hour down the back of Bourbon Street? Out the window, driving on one hand and then shooting out the other. Like what in the world are they talking about? So did you see any other reports talking about shooting, or was this a media malfunction?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I probably should have looked into some more mainstream articles to see if this was explained in some way, but when I saw that, my head exploded and I had to walk away from the screen. I just bookmarked it and it was like, this doesn't make sense.
Oh, so wait till there's information. Yeah, I mean, because it could be completely unrelated. We don't know anything at this point.
It could be shot by police. Oh, that would be
or Hesher. Actually, believe it or not, the first thing I thought of is I thought there was a bunch of good old boys who thought when this guy was that they pulled out their gas trying to help, and then unfortunately, innocent bystanders. Unfortunately, don't be doing that unless you know what you're doing, people.
That would be good for gun restriction narratives, I think. If that was the case. So. You just blown the game there.
Giving them good ideas,
Yeah, one of them had a bump stock as well and managed to get quite a few more shots off in defense of freedom and liberty. Look, so that's interesting. So again, what we're saying, Hesher, here is, we'd like to get more of an explanation of what happened there, because isn't that an interesting detail? This would be a first. Mowing people down with a truck and shooting at the same time.
Yeah,
in an alleyway,
like something out of a John Woo movie or something like that.
Video game, Grand Theft Auto, right?
This is more. It does add an air of. It spices up the story a little bit, actually. So that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. You've absolutely scrambled our brains. Thank you very much for that, Hesher. So we'll go with some of these visuals and take a look at it. But I'll also remark that there's no was there, I don't know, there wasn't a manifesto. That's something that we look at, which is really shady. Is this kind of, the quote manifesto is always like somehow, you know, sent to a TV station or a newspaper saying, this is why I've done this pointless terrorist attack that will achieve nothing, and I'll end up dead, and I guess may or may not kill anybody, I'm not sure, and it's no point, and I'm not connected with ISIS even though I'm flying the ISIS flag. I mean, there's so many different. Oh, by the way, Hesher, if you look at this photo on screen, Ruckus as well, you'll see that the back tire is deflated. Does that mean that the tire was shot out? And if so, if the tire was shot out, could some of those bullets have hit innocent bystanders in the area? And that would be interesting, especially if the person who is firing at the tire is somehow involved in the event. We're just throwing that out there as a possibility. Of course, we're not even speculating. We're just talking hypothetically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, anyone who's, you know, properly trained with a firearm is not going to be just shooting randomly, trying to stop this. You know what I mean? If you're good with your pistol, and you had a straight shot into the cab from the front, like it was coming right at you or something, I could see that maybe happening. But you know, to picture people pulling out their blasters and trying to shoot tires out on a crowded street, that is ridiculous stupidity. If that is what happened, be it from law enforcement or from bystanders. So I don't know. I feel like if that really was how that if that woman really did get shot in the foot and that really is how that happened, this should be explained. You know, there's a set of forensics and news that should go along with it. But rather than that, what I'm seeing is that video. And, you know, do I trust that video? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. And the whole thing with like calling your mom and having your mom tell you how to like make a tourniquet out of a sock. I'm sorry. I don't think there's a vein that you can bleed out from in your foot. I don't think you need a tourniquet. I don't know why that was included. You know, it was just sort of like weird, superfluous details that feel like conspiracy candy to me, quite honestly.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Ruckus, on any of these items? I mean, just in general, go ahead.
Well, I was curious, I mean, because I've heard people bring up the whole, the FBI meme, you know, the one, right? He was on our radar, right? Has that been confirmed? I mean, where's that coming from? Or is that just, again, speculation everywhere?
I haven't heard that he was on the radar of the FBI. It's something commonly that you'll see afterwards. Nicholas Cruz is a good example. You know, there's like already been flagged as being psychologically unstable with firearms, and all of a sudden he appears at the Parkland school shooting.
There was the one thing that stood out to me about this one so far, and I did mention it briefly, by the way, for people who don't know, that's the meme that I was talking about. Say the line, he was on our radar. But the thing is that the FBI agent Nosering, the lovely lady with the nose ring, that was fascinating, came out and immediately said, this is not a terror event. And I remember, historically speaking, that when they want to sell the narrative that this was terror, they would usually come right out and say, this was terror. And we've seen this type of thing before, usually to hide the identity and do a DEI thing. But the world has moved on from that since Trump has been reelected again. I know he's not in power yet, but pretty much everybody's dropped that whole nonsense. So it's almost like they did this reverse psychology on purpose, saying that it wasn't terrorism so that people would run with the narrative and understand, hey, this is what we're doing. It's a bit on the nose with that nose ring. I don't know. Well, I just found the way they treated it very strangely.
I agree, Ruckus. And so that was like a red flag, a red rag to a bull, basically. To the conservative base, we'll look at, you know, an African-American female FBI spokesperson who's at a conference with the Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. And so she's coming out and saying, oh, we don't think this is a terror attack at the beginning. So that set off the conservatives on fire, and Fox News, of course, immediately. In the same way that, you know, if you want to sell a narrative, sometimes it's, you know, quite ingenious, actually, at the beginning. I'll tell you a good example of this was the lab leak narrative, because Facebook was censoring it early on. that basically the whole quote freedom movement and conservative base thought, oh, Mark Zuckerberg's censoring it, it must be true, ergo it's automatically true, because they tried to suppress it. So it's a little bit of reverse psychology there, and it works. It's people use that as proof that it's true. So here all that did was just turn it into more polarized, and this became a polarized narrative, because so the immediate reaction was from the right, from Fox News, from the celebrity podcasting circuit, was that, oh, this is because of the southern border. This is what happens. Biden's weak on the border. Okay, so this is what happens. The ISIS is coming over the Mexican border. And this is basically a rehash of this talking point that kind of was launched in like 2012, 13, Al-Qaeda coming over the southern border, then Duncan Hunter.
They literally brought that video back out from the past with the dude who dressed up like Osama bin Laden and crossed the border. Who was that? I can't remember now. Such a joke.
Joe Biggs.
Somebody like that.
so thank Alex Jones for that one. So yeah, ISIS is coming over the Mexican border. I mean, just ridiculous. Douglas McGregor then threw gasoline on the fire, saying Hamas was plotting to invade America in Mexico. Basically, we have intelligence from intel sources that Hamas and Hezbollah have sleeper cells all over Central America. They're coming up through the Darien Gap. So what you do is you combine an emotive issue like immigration, legitimate issue, actually an actual thing happening, and you combine it with Islamic terror. Okay, and it's absolutely a lethal cocktail once that's injected into the conversation. So that's what happened here. So it had taken on a partisan kind of talking point dimension there. And again, it's Biden's fault, it's the Democrats. And so everyone knows the border is a catastrophe. So we don't need to litigate that. That argument's actually already been won. And what's interesting was because, and I'll just throw this out, because Kamala Harris was getting battered on the border issue, Biden before her, and then when Biden jumped out of the race and Kamala came in, the Democrats went hell for leather on ICE apprehensions and deportations. So you look at the uptick of apprehensions and deportations hit record highs in the last 4 months. And that's because they were freaking out, panicking that this was going to sink their electoral chances. And of course it did. This is one of the issues that really destroyed the Democrats in the election. So the point I'm making here is the border issue has already been acknowledged. And when Trump comes in, the whole policy is going to get reversed in a big way, and who knows, the rest of the wall might even go up. So like that argument's already been won. So why would you intentionally add that into this story when this person is an American, U.S. Army veteran, military, no previous record of anything, and yet they're combining this with the border, and they're saying, and adding, and I'll bring up this graphic here. This is Sean Ryan. This is a popular podcast. He says he's a Navy SEAL, CIA contractor, host of the Sean Ryan Show. So he had a guest on, I think his name is Shoemate, I'm not sure. And had a big interview that millions of people watched, and everyone's freaking out afterwards of what was said here. Iranian man pads being smuggled over the border. So they're ticking the ISIS box, the Iran box, and the China box. So they released an email. We'll get to some of this. Chinese anti-gravitational UFO tech drones off the coast of New Jersey. Oh my God, he's a whistleblower. This is the Vegas car bomber as well. So I mean, the disinformation, all the crazy propaganda and speculation that came afterwards on this has completely flooded the information space. And if you go to listen to spaces, there are literally people freaking out. They're saying, they're sitting there, 200 or 300 people in a room saying, oh my God, did you watch the Sean Ryan interview? And some woman said, oh yes, I watched it 3 times. Oh, I can't believe it. I'm so traumatized. What they said there. And then, you have to, we're saying to people, you got to step back and saying, yeah, that's been said by 2 guys. So you have one spook talking to another spook about an alleged car bomber with an email that they say is unconfirmed and about Chinese anti-gravitational UFO alien tech. I mean, at some point, like, you have to hit pause and say, like, what exactly here do you actually know is empirically true? And let's just backtrack the conversation a little bit. But this isn't what these people do. And it becomes an orgy of speculation. And so the other person interview, I don't know if you have a clip from that interview or not, Hesher, that you want to share with us, but definitely if you do,
Yeah.
or if there's any other items you want to sort of tee up this other story with first.
I do actually. Let me fill in the blank from that last question I just threw out there in that last clip. Spore found this for me while we were talking. So this is at ABC News. New Orleans attack updates. This is published January 1st. Headline: New Orleans attack updates. Suspect inspired by ISIS was military veteran. So there they are saying it like it's fact. Inspired by ISIS. Noting he's a military veteran. And here's the interesting part that kind of fills in what we were talking about. They say, after mowing down numerous people over a 3-block stretch on the famed thoroughfare while firing shots into the crowd, the suspect, identified by sources as Shamsuddin Jabbar, age 42, allegedly got out of the truck wielding an assault rifle and opened fire on police officers. Law enforcement officials briefed on the incident told ABC News this. Officers returned fire, killing Jabbar, U.S.-born citizen from Texas. At least 2 police officers were injured, one by gunfire and the other when the officer was pinned by the truck. So there you go. They make it sound like he was indeed firing shots into the crowd while driving and then got out of the car. So there you go. For what it's worth, that's the mainstream fill in on odd video that we just watched. And I do have the clip of this shoe guy on Sean Ryan also that we can check out.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. And we'll go back to, so we're going back and forth between New Orleans and Las Vegas on this. And just just quickly on the New Orleans thing. And I think this is important point to make right now. Let me see if I can add a presentation screen to that as well. But if you look at our 2025 predictions, I talked about this in the predictions. I said the next front for the United States is a war against ISIS. It's to reboot the war against ISIS, and Trump is the perfect candidate to do that because he claims that he defeated ISIS in his first term, and ISIS, of course, has had a revival because of the U.S., NATO, Turkish, Israeli-backed HTS Al-Qaeda in Syria taking over Damascus, and all of a sudden ISIS is let off the chain in Al-Tanf and northeastern Syria as if by magic. The prisons are emptied and ISIS is on the loose. So, I mean, it's a perfect thing that's been set up. U.S. have already launched airstrikes against ISIS, by the way. But what the U.S. need to do is re-up their deployment in Iraq and Syria because the Iraqis don't want them there. The Iraqi parliament has told the U.S. to go pound sand and get out twice. And the U.S. has said, no, we're not leaving. You have no sovereignty. We're going to stay. We're fighting ISIS, so to speak. And then the same with northeastern Syria. The United States has been illegally occupying 25% of Syria's sovereign territory since 2017. That came under Trump. Of course, it stayed under Biden, and Trump is back. So he's going to, of course, want to continue that deployment as well. So, yeah, Ruckus has brought that up. Yeah, if you scroll down to the geopolitical section, Ruckus, I'll bring that up on screen with Ruckus is showing us. Right there, you can see Trump's fight against ISIS. It's right there. So just go to our main 21st Century page and we'll explain. This was actually in our predictions. And we've been talking about this for weeks, by the way, that this is exactly what they're doing. They're teeing it up for Trump. So I see the New Orleans story as just that. It's an attempt to sort of tee up that narrative again and give some kind of a legal justification or some kind of a mechanism to call for a re-up of the NDAA or, increase the authorization of military force in the region. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer. It just kind of reminds me of San Bernardino in there. But back to So let's just get that out of the way. We'll go back to the journalist in the yoga pants as well. We'll show you that on screen later. Yeah. But anyway, here we are, Hesher. So this is the big interview that everybody was watching. And so this is Mr. Shumat. Don't have you have more information on this person who's the guest here. And it's like some big bombshell interview. They're coming with like intel, right? And there's an email that's been sent, Hesher. Like what's going on? Give us the kind of scoop here.
So what we're about to see is this guy, Sam Shumat, Sam Shu. I keep calling him Sam Shu. I don't think that's his full name. That's kind of what I've been referring to him as.
Shumat.
And he, like, if you look into this guy, his sort of social media narrative is that of a guy who left his post with the government and the military, or as a military contractor. I'm not sure what his status was, but over the jab. He didn't want to take the jab, or he took the jab and was injured by it. I'm not sure which, but then he built this whole social media presence, and it's sort of just a like milquetoast, like right-wingy, Con Inc. sort of meme level, Instagram and probably X presence. So, he's already kind of a person, and he's also been active. Like I've seen other people from the Intel community saying they've been known of this guy, and he's got issues with Ukraine. I believe he's like pro-Ukraine, fighting, and I think Sean Ryan is too. I think a lot of these guys. We talked about this concept of what military operators consider bad guys, and if they're told that's the bad guy, their thought process is get them. We do our job. That's the bad guy. We go to work. It's kind of like that mindset. So for them, Russians are bad guys, ISIS are bad guys, Hamas are bad guys, right?
Muslims.
Yes, Muslims, exactly. So, anyways, this guy, he's like, in the second phase of his career or whatever, and he's like this, operator, influencer type of guy. A lot of characters like this out there. And he claims that he received an email from the Cybertruck bomber, Matt Leinenberger, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just play it so you can kind of see it. He's about to describe to Sean that he got this email. He didn't think much of it until the event happened. He went back, he reread the email, he started, talking to his battle buddies in his text group. So he's kind of describing that right now, and he's going to describe that real quickly and play a piece of audio, like an audio message he recorded and sent to his buddy. And then he's going to read the email. So it'll take a couple minutes to get through it, but here we go.
Okay. I woke up and I said, OF, I'm shaking. This guy emailed me 2 days ago. I'm not playing. And then he said, damn. And then this was my response to him at 8:48. Like, just woke up.
Dude, I'm fucking shaking, bro. You don't understand. This guy emailed me and told me he was being watched by the FBI and Homeland Security. We're going to do anything.
Okay, so just what we're looking at here, we'll go back to this, but what this is somebody who's making the story about his text messages between him and his buddy that have nothing to do with the bomber and their reaction. So he's trying to pull you into that emotional state, like, oh man, we had this emotional exchange with my buddy. I got to share it with you, man, because that's a big story. Like, my emotional exchange with my buddy is a big story to show you how real this is.
Mm-hmm.
Pulling you into the story. I mean, this is kind of like the lowest level this isn't like journalism. Okay. This is like entertainment. This is kind of like, reminds me of reality TV, Survival Island and all this sort of crap. I'm just saying this is kind of silly. And it really it's a very weak kickoff for this interview, but go ahead, Hesher. Sorry.
To him because he had a VBID. I'm not fucking playing, dude. I have the email. I am shaking, man. This
I'm literally shaking.
And it goes from there. And
what's a VBID, Hesher?
VBID. He's gonna explain it, but yeah.
Spec Ops, VBIDs. I mean, you've got all these acronyms with military vernacular, and I'm just so sick of it.
I know.
Because I know people who are, veterans and special forces, active duty. They don't talk to me like that. They don't throw acronyms at me all the time, but it's meant to draw you into this like special club that we have the intel and trust us. We couldn't possibly be leading you up a garden path here because we work for the CIA, but we're journalists as well.
Yeah, so, we're breaking the story.
We're breaking this. This is a bombshell story. We've got an email. We don't know who sent it. I mean, Sean Ryan at the beginning of this, when he's saying that we can't. I'll quote him. He says, we're not necessarily validating what came in that email. And then they go on to talk about the email for a half hour. I mean, it's almost like a joke.
Right. It's like the warning at the beginning of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds or something. If you tuned in after that warning.
Oh my God, this is totally Grover Mills. And this extended afterwards with Sean Ryan saying, putting out a video on, we'll probably show it on Twitter, saying this story is too heavy. I'm taking my family and we're disappearing. I mean, it's like totally Orson Welles.
Yeah.
So they're drawing their audience through this whole process to get the audience invested in not just the story, but in the person telling the story. You see. So I mean, this is just entertainment, is what it is. It's not journalism. And as we'll find out, this isn't actually a story, but go ahead.
I sat there for probably an hour talking to my wife. I'm shaking. I can't even think straight. Like normal day is shot. And I didn't know what I want to do. Do I sit on this? Do I do nothing with it? I've got to tell somebody. I've got to tell the FBI at least, because this is huge. This is all over the news. And then I was like, well, dude, this guy wanted to get in contact with Sean Ryan. So let me get this to Sean Ryan. See.
So this is his way of telling this is hilarious. So it's something that he thinks is attached to a crime, a high profile crime. And he thinks, oh, dude, I got this email and this guy wanted to get on Sean Ryan. I know Sean Ryan's producer. I know how to find him. That's really hard. It's linked in the top of his Twitter description. I mean, anybody could hit up that producer. And of course, whoever that producer is, the shark that they are, was like, yes, let's break it. This is going to be great. This is going to be
Airplane. You remember that film Airplane? Get me Jeff Stryker. Yeah. Someone to get me Jeff Stryker. No, I mean, we're making jokes about this, but we're getting into the realm of entertainment, reality TV. It's not journalism, folks. But anyway, go ahead.
Who thinks this way? Who thinks I need to tell the FBI, so I'm going to go on the Sean Ryan podcast?
There's only one person who will be able to tell this story to. It's Sean. It's Jack Ryan.
One show that I know the FBI is watching has got to be Sean Ryan. So I'm
better believe it. So, and of course, that has nothing to do with the disinformation campaign. If that's the case,
Yeah. Right.
Move along. Nothing to see there.
Yeah.
If I can get with him, and I had a buddy who knew your producer, and we went from there. But
wow.
Wow.
You want to read the email?
Yep. So this email came in on December 31st at 10.
I love how he almost said manifesto. You want to read the mail?
10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. He said, in case I do not make it to my decision point or on to the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones, he puts that in quotes, he says drones, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPSEN, that's Operation Center, our OPSEN location for this activity in
OPSEN. So help us with the acronyms, Hesher, so we can keep up with the intel to make sure that we're processing this professionally. OPSEN, Operation Center, right? All right. Okay.
It is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT.
Hesher, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got your audio. Hesher, so China's been doing this for years.
Mm-hmm. Take his word for it. Just believe him.
So China's been launching anti-gravity UFO drones out of submarines off the coast of the Atlantic for years.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just move along. Nothing to see there. Just it's part of the narrative. So I mean, at that point, and so when I replied in his thread here, Sean Ryan, when this went out 2 days ago, I said, and mark my words, I said, at best, the guy who wrote it is batshit crazy. If it's real, he's a paranoid schizophrenic, probably thinks he's a targeted individual, a TI. Okay. So if you know what that means, you know what I'm talking about. It's a big rabbit hole, and needs therapy, needs help, basically. At worst, it's a fabrication. So it's either somebody who's crazy or it's a fabrication. And as a journalist, is that a story?
No.
If I can't verify who sent me that email, and it's not just somebody winding me up, trying to make me or my show part of a disinformation propaganda campaign, which is what the CIA do. It's what the US government does with mainstream media. That's what they do with mainstream media. And so now we have the new mainstream media. The celebrity podcast circuit have taken the place of CNN, ABC, NBC, and Fox. They're doing exactly the same thing that the mainstream media do. They're performing. They have the audience now, and they've shifted the practice and injected a lot of this garbage into the new independent mainstream media. That's how I'm reading this here.
Yeah, and it wasn't all that long ago that a CIA agent or former agent was caught on one of those gotcha videos, the like James O'Keefe style gotcha videos, talking about how they can go after anyone they want. And he was the one that was talking about nudging. He was talking. This is a classic example potentially of CIA style nudging. You give someone a piece of information on social media or email because it's very simple to predict what they're motivated by, what their response to it will be, and they're very good at picking out people that will take action, right? So this guy's action is to go on the Sean Ryan show and use that as a reason to say, oh, I'm going on here because the FBI needs to know about this.
And just to put some meat on the bones of what Hesher's just said, very important. The nudging goes from the intelligence agency and their whole propaganda gaggle blob. They nudge right up to the White House level. Avril Haines, former intelligence director under Trump, she pushed these photos to Trump of dead birds at the Skripal poisoning site in Salisbury, England, and used that to basically drive Trump crazy. And they took some anti-Russian measures after that. It turns out that she was misrepresenting what she was showing the president of the United States. That's the head of the intelligence. You can go look that up, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to take my word for it. So that's nudging. Trump gets nudged. His daughter nudged him. Ivanka nudged Donald Trump, saying, look at the babies in Syria, this terrible chemical weapons attack. You remember that?
Yeah.
And he's on record saying, well, they showed me these photos and my daughter or somebody, I don't know how that story got eventually released, about Ivanka imploring her father, the president, to do something about this alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria. So Trump was being nudged. So what I'm saying, guys, is if the president can be nudged by the intelligence services and whoever else is in the orbit of the White House, then certainly people in the media can be nudged. Mainstream journalists get fed fake intelligence, and some of them make their careers by using their sources, and they'll feed them a real story. It'll help them get a promotion. Then they'll start feeding them fake stories. Iraq WMDs, perfect example. New York Times. And so the Times will keep these people on staff because of their great sources. So this is how the intelligence services plays with journalists. It's how they reel them in and they captured them. They've capped. I'm not talking about paid people necessarily on the payroll of the CIA. I'm talking about people that are just too eager to basically hoover up whatever's being sent to them and then running with it. We see that in the alternative media. And you see it. You're seeing. Personally, I think that's what we're seeing here. I think they've just found an easy mark in this guy. He's eager to get, increase his followers have gone through the roof after this. His clout and everything is like through the. Even though the information he's sharing is bogus. Probably his clout has gone through the roof. So anyway, we'll go back to I'm going to try not to stop the clip, but I will call timeout listen, like the referee on the football pitch, I'm going to pull a yellow card.
Yeah. Well, this one's just asking for it. All right, we'll get back to it. He's about to throw out ISR. That's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. There,
ISR, everybody.
It has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated.
Red flag. Hold on, yellow flag. The balloon. Wait, hold on. Are we talking about the Chinese balloons now?
Yes.
This is just ticking all the boxes. Yeah. I love this story. They're not leaving anything out. So the Chinese balloons that drove the conspiracy, the QAnon crowd, drove them crazy. I remember when that happened, Mario Nafal, who is the Daily Mail of X, okay, he ran a space about the Chinese balloons. And I was on the panel with Tom Fenton from Judicial Watch. I think Sebastian Gorka must have parachuted in as well. They had all these like ex-Intel experts and whatnot. They're all talking like they thought this was some kind of Chinese satellite or some sort of unidentified UFO. I mean, they spent hours speculating. And I said, it's probably just a weather balloon or it's nothing. And why are you scrambling fighter jets to shoot down a freaking balloon? And it turns out, and then everyone's like shouted at me saying, oh my God, how can you say that? Then the press conference came from the White House and they said, yes, it's just a fucking balloon. And the room went quiet and it's like nobody was challenging me after that. But it just shows you how eager these people are to run with conspiracy theories, like crazy conspiracy theories. So now we have this cocktail that isn't missing any ingredients. It's got every single conceivable talking point in it, Hesher. This is like a tapestry of propaganda. Anyway, go ahead.
All right.
System. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate.
Whoa. Checkmate. Unlimited payload capacity. What the F does that mean?
What does that mean?
Unlimited payload capacity. Hold on for a minute. Like, guys, let's just unpack that for a moment. So we've got a UFO with anti-gravitational technology that the Chinese supposedly have that we've never heard of. And they've been parked off the Atlantic coast for years. And it's got unlimited payload capacity. Does that mean that it can lift up anything?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is bad news for Elon and SpaceX because Elon, you're out of business now. Because there's now anti-gravitational tech with unlimited payload capacity, and you're sending up rockets with freaking fuel. I mean, this is bad news for SpaceX, Elon. What do you think? The share prices should be plummeting, right? If this was a real story, SpaceX shares would just be like through the floor, and everyone's looking for, a Chinese avionics company to invest in because the Chinese are so far ahead of us.
There's competition and a motive, Patrick.
I mean, come on.
Suggesting.
I mean, this is just getting silly.
Yeah. So they can take a Chinese powered anti-gravity UFO, launch it from a submarine off the coast of the United States, and it can carry
the Chinese have undetectable submarines apparently. So
right.
It's like
so they can hover over the White House with 12 elephants on board, I guess, if they want.
Yeah. Good luck, elephants.
Yeah.
U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them, and what the way forward is. China is poised to.
China is employing what? The government? The U.S. government? I'm confused.
It makes no sense. Like, and it's how the U.S. is employing it. Like, so we have it too, and we're employing it. I don't understand.
It's a little bit vague, but anyway, he's a top special forces guy who wrote the email, so we have to pay attention to it.
Yeah,
it's top OPSEC stuff.
Right.
Attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to.
Okay, there's a thing called a targeted individual. Okay, and I'm not downplaying this as I know there's a lot of people who get sucked into this. There's an online cult, unfortunately, that pulls a lot of vulnerable people in and convinces them that they're targeted individuals and that all this space tech is being used against them and stuff like that. And some people are could be someone with PTSD, could be somebody who's got serious, real clinical mental issues, and they're pulled into this online targeted individual cult. And so I'm looking at this email. If this was written by this guy, I would say that he is in serious mental problems. Serious mental problems. And that's the first thing. And that's what I originally replied a couple of days ago when I was on Sean Ryan's thread. I said, at best, this guy's batshit crazy. At worst, it's a fabrication. One of those two. So they're not exploring any of those two possibilities here. Instead, they're pumping out to their 10 million subscribers or whatever a completely ridiculous narrative and not questioning it and just leaving it out there like a limited hangout for everybody to consume and drive people paranoid. I mean, you're doing a lot of damage to people by using your credibility that you built up with your brand and then basically using it to fire hose sewage down the throats of your audience. Sorry to be cruel, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
To move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive VBID. Let me pause right there for a second. So he says a massive VBID. When I was talking to the FBI yesterday, they didn't know what a VBID was. I had to explain what that acronym meant. Literally.
You fucking serious?
Dead serious. I said it twice and he goes, you said that word VBID. Can you tell me what that is? For your audience, a VBID, for your audience who has not been in the GWOT for the last 20 years, a VBID is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. In layman's terms, a car bomb, what we saw at Trump Tower.
So he just insults the audience there, basically.
We're just not in the community. I'm not in the IC or the OPSEC community or the whatever community. I didn't know what a VBID was. Like I've actually
it means something completely different in the OnlyFans world. So he wanted to make sure people didn't go down the wrong rabbit hole, Patrick.
Don't confuse us more than we already are, Ruckus, please. We are ourselves vulnerable victims of this at the moment. So we're just trying to. Anyway, that's another for the list. Hesher, everybody, I just wanted to let you know that Hesher is compiling a glossary of all these arcane terms that are being used, and we'll post all these acronyms up so that you can be better informed when you're listening to your favorite podcasters in the Intel community. So I just wanted to make that clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, you too can LARP as an operator, as a normal sandwich eating American. So we'll get that set up for you.
So backing up, he says, I am armed and have a massive VBID. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Here's where he gets into the other stuff. And this is where we had to redact the names. Well, your producer redacted the names. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes of over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of civcas, that's civilian casualties, that killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. FORA continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM.
Okay, what's ISR?
That's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So think signal intelligence, using stingrays to capture people's phone communications, maybe Global Hawk flying above with cameras, that kind of thing, spy stuff.
Okay, so this is an interesting part of the interview. So what he's done here is he introduced something that sounds somewhat quasi-legitimate, i.e., as during his service time, the person who allegedly sent this email, when he was in Afghanistan, he witnessed bombings that took major civilian casualties, and this somehow is a war crime, basically. So what this does is this then signaling to the audience, the compassionate audience, that this is a whistleblower here, and whistleblowers are automatically afforded credibility emotionally, and immediately make a connection with the public on that. That's when you cross the line from military over to civilian via the whistleblower route. Okay, so immediately you engender the respect, the sympathy of the audience. So why not lead with that part? But the fact that that's contaminated with Chinese UFO balloons just discredits the whistleblower component completely, because of course I'm questioning whether this person is completely insane. So whether paranoid schizophrenics also can invent past experiences. This is common for paranoid schizophrenic. So if that's what he is, and this is what I originally speculated it might be, somebody who's just insane. And so by injecting that, they've made it credible. So they brought the audience back and brought them back. So even anybody who was like slightly estranged at the beginning of this interview is now back, and they're paying attention. So this is real kind of yo-yo, I don't know what to call it, but demagoguery, I think, is a word I'm going to use here. It's just on the cusp of demagoguery, playing with people's emotions, fears, desires. Great propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Effective. It's working. I've talked to people that have been experiencing that same thing that you mentioned, where it's like, I'm so traumatized, I'm so worried, I'm so concerned. I've talked to multiple people that are that's their takeaway from this. And that's the intended effect. So if you're out there feeling that way, just keep in mind that is very likely the main intended effect of this whole dog and pony show.
The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with US FORA, an agent, redacted, of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked with redacted IO staff on this as well as the response to Bala Murghab. Redacted commander at the time, redacted, can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war, because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. Then he says, for vetting, my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110, that's 1st Battalion 10th Special Forces Group. My profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with UAP, USAP access.
What is USAP? Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is. But I checked his credentials on
TSI, USAPE, IDE, TSA. What?
So TSSCI is the high level secret clearance. So a lot of government employees and military people, military contractors will get a secret clearance, and to most people that's just like, oh, okay, that person has a clearance. But there's another level up from a standard secret clearance, which is TSSCI. And that is like full compartmentalized security clearance, which means basically if you have a TSSCI clearance, you have a base commander or some sort of someone you're a subordinate to, and there's a security manager. So the security manager at your base is the one that would allow you into a SCIF, for example. A SCIF is basically a computer lab and a meeting place that is locked down. It has a keypad entry. You can't take any phones or anything like that into these rooms. That's where you would get on like the military SIPRNet and things like that. So this is someone who has gone through the vetting process, the very thorough vetting process of TSSCI. You're subject to random drug tests. You're not allowed to leave the country without talking to your security manager, telling them where you're going, why you're going there. You're not allowed to have social media exchanges with people in foreign countries. There's a lot of very specific rules. And if this person really did send this email and really did have, if everything was above board here, which clearly we're questioning, But if everything was above board, the amount of violations that have taken place, like, never mind the attack and everything, but just the amount of clerical and security, TSSCI security clearance holding rules that have been broken just by sending this email are enough to get someone sent to prison for a long time.
So let me ask you this, Hesher. If you were on SSRIs, serotonin uptake inhibitors, antidepressant meds, would that somehow compromise your ability to get high-level security clearance?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you don't have a criminal record and you don't have restraining orders against you, there's a good chance that wouldn't be a problem. But like, this is like, there is a lot of stability tests. There's a lot of like mental stability. There's a lot that goes into getting one of those clearances, and clearly someone who's a special operations guy, a Green Beret, they've already gone through so much vetting just to get to that position, to have that, to be the top tier operator. So the idea that this guy's having mental troubles, I mean, it would certainly appear that way, but it's kind of hard to swallow that narrative, knowing how much work people put in to become a Green Beret.
Unless he went to Fort Bragg and was the subject of some unknown experiment.
Well, there's that. There's the whole sheep dipping concept. And I would wager that they are out there. They are among those SOF influencers out there, are those like sheep dip type of people.
Yeah, sheep dipped, if people aren't familiar with that, this is like before you're released into the wild, you go under a certain type of conditioning and operational preparation for your new role outside, potentially of the military, but still working with the state or some state agency or the Pentagon or whatnot, or some operational cell or something like that. That's one interpretation of sheep dipped. And this is interesting because a lot of people might not be aware of this, but if you wanted to release somebody into the wild, i.e. the public, and become a civilian, but maybe inject them into the alternative media, you would do so with some kind of a story. You need a story, like they're a whistleblower, or they got fired for something. This is how you would do it. And this is how you get immediate street cred. And that becomes your new identity, as it were, as a professional. You have inside knowledge from your experience in the services, and you're a victim because you were trying to tell the truth, and you'd been trying to do the right thing, but your rights were violated, or you were misunderstood, and you've been persecuted, and now you're out here, and please help and support my channel. Basically, I don't know
if this guy's still alive, Patrick, he might be able to get himself the biggest podcast on the planet, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. It'd be I'm not even talking about him. I'm even talking about some of the people, out in the media information space, who have set themselves up as, ex-military experts on stuff. I'm just saying, because it makes sense, because there's plenty of them in the mainstream. There's plenty of these people in the mainstream controlling narratives, injecting disinformation, confusion, bamboozling the public, and promoting wars at any given opportunity, and promoting fear, and promoting the war on terror. I don't even need to explain or give examples of this, because they're just replete over the last 25 years. But anyway, one red flag on that last portion, Hesher, he mentioned that, so this is a military special forces guy in Afghanistan, supposedly has blown the whistle. Has anybody checked out, at the UN said it was a war crime. There's claim in there that's easily verifiable. He gave a location as well. But then he says the DEA, and that's the Drug Enforcement Administration. So he's a military, but the DEA helped to make this story or whatever. What's the DEA have to do with an airstrike on Afghan civilians? That was weird. Anyway, I'm just flagging that.
It's like he's throwing everything at the wall, and that sheep dip topic. This guy, this Sam character that we're watching right here, he could potentially easily fit into that, because he used the COVID jab as sort of his his first victimization. Like, I'm out because of this, and that was I don't know when exactly that was. It was somewhere in the last 3 years, and the two of those last 3 years, it's been a completely mainstream conservative talking point of outrage to go against the jab. You know, none of those people were doing that in 2020 and 2021, obviously. Like some of us who experienced what that would do to your
that's Sean Ryan Hesher, or is that the other guy who does
Sam? Yeah, Sam.
Sam Shoe something. He's the
Match.
prior jabbed guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Prior jab. And I've seen other people who also set themselves up as pundits on the back of the jab issue.
Right.
Too many actually to count in the last 2 years. So it's a very common thing. So could be a real thing, but we're just saying I automatically I'm going to be a little more skeptical of people who claim that they're in the intelligence game. And because, as Mike Pompeo told us, the one thing they teach you in intelligence is how to lie and how to spin narratives and things like that. So I'm just saying, it's not necessarily good for your credibility to be ex-intel in working in a journalistic field. It's not, to me. I actually think it's a liability. And I've worked with former spooks, or I've shared panels with former spooks. Some of them are, so the ones that I've shared panels with that are credible are analysts. But anybody who is doing like other work and stuff like that, some of them were a little bit shady, especially some of the ex-CIA guys. Now there's others that, to me, their credibility is unimpeachable, like Ray McGovern, for instance, who served, I don't know, 6 U.S. presidents or something crazy, got his commission from JFK. He's been an anti-war activist for decades. Okay, that guy, I have nothing but praise and admiration and respect for Ray McGovern. And Larry Johnson is another example. Larry has been on the right side of almost every issue as far as I've been following him. So these guys are not like putting out fear porn about like ISIS coming over the southern border. Then we have this whole other class of ex-intel or Navy SEALs or whatever. Navy SEALs is a very marketable brand. And a lot of Navy SEALs, especially after the Bin Laden raid, but after Benghazi, have monetized their Navy SEAL credential in the media and the publishing space. So it's a very recognizable brand. Probably the first one to really do it is probably Jesse Ventura. But, he had a legit political career, governor of Minnesota. So, but the Navy SEAL brand is powerful, and it affords immediate respect and credibility. So my concern would be if somebody's using that and trading off it, but not necessarily doing a professional job, and maybe at worst involved in actual propaganda and disinformation voluntarily, or they could be doing it voluntarily just because they believe that's their worldview, that these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and we need to go to war. So I don't know. I'm not saying that, they're all marionette puppets. What I'm saying is that they are performing that function.
Right. Yeah, it can get convoluted when especially for civilians, because civilians gravitate to people like this because, they are in many ways the best among us. They have had experiences that most of us can only imagine. There's a camaraderie, a brotherhood, a patriotism, and knowledge, that you can gain from these people. And, a lot of these people, like Tim Kennedy is another one that we'll get to in a minute here. Tim Kennedy is way closer related to this than some people might realize. But I mean, Tim Kennedy, he operates right here out of Austin. He runs Sheepdog Response. It's a place that many civilians go to get a download. They go there and they do a firearms course. They do, close combat, room clearing courses, stuff like this. Medical. I mean, you can really learn a lot of things from some of these people. You're gaining a skill set that you would not be able to gain as a civilian. And this is sort of a new phenomena here in America, and when it first started, there were a lot of people in the special operation and military communities that did not approve of, transferring this knowledge to American citizens. I myself have gone to some of these classes taught by Green Berets. And, you know, when you hear some of them talk about it, it's like, I'll use Mike Glover as a great example. I took one of his classes and he brought this exact topic up. And he said, you know what? People used to criticize me and say, you can't do this. You shouldn't be training American civilians to defend themselves and to know military tactics. And his response is brilliant. He says, what are you talking about? You send us to foreign countries and train foreigners, foreign civilians. You had me training Afghani citizens to do these sort of things. And you're trying to tell me that I can't come back here and transfer that knowledge to American citizens as our society is like starting to show a lot of cracks and a lot of new forms of violence, you know? So it's the whole thing's really interesting when you think about it.
I mean, there's another aspect to that, Hesher, as we're talking about the Las Vegas Tesla supposed perpetrator stroke, you know, victim in the bombing, his own bombing, Green Berets. Okay, so from those training courses, I can tell you from my experience, okay, and this is just what I heard at the range, the people that are shooting with, as you do, people talk. And Green Berets active duty in Ukraine. No secret, okay? Yeah. Active duty U.S. Green Berets in Ukraine, not just training, but also active in combat roles, okay? And they're recruiting other people from those training schools to go to Ukraine. So that's happening, and that's been happening for 2-3 years now, okay? That's a real thing. So Hesher, like, I'm interested in that story. And isn't that an interesting story? And all these people know about this, and they're not doing podcasts on it. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed as well, all the Benghazi Navy SEALs, all the Benghazi Special Forces OPSEC guys, okay? The one thing they never talk about, and only recently you might hear one or two admit it, but Christopher Stevens and people burning alive at the U.S. Facility in Benghazi, and they were shipping arms to Al-Qaeda, or what became Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda and HTS in Syria, the moderate rebels. That's what the story of Benghazi was. It was arms trafficking from the United States via the CIA and people working for the CIA, including contractors, including Navy SEAL and Special Forces contractors, trafficking arms to terrorists to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, Operation Timber Sycamore. Let's throw a couple billion in there from Uncle Sam and traffic more weapons. That's the story. And how come all these Benghazi guys won't talk about that? Because that, if you're an author or a podcaster, or you're set yourself up as a quote journalist, how come you have, why is it blackballed to talk about this for the last 10 years? I mean, so that's the problem I have with people who pose or are LARPing as journalists is, and this is the problem with people from intelligence who have embedded themselves in media, is all the interesting stuff that they might know about, they're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
And so they right back to everything on the periphery, everything on the, and everything that fits a Democrat Republican mode for, you know, divisive talking points. Like, that's all good. It's basically off-Broadway Fox News. That's what the podcasting circuit has become.
Yeah.
It's a huge disappointment, quite frankly.
It is. And it goes back to them holding that TSSCI clearance. They literally cannot, you know what I mean? Like, they cannot. It's like you can be out of the military, out of government service, whatever. You cannot go back and talk about things that were at that level. So anything like that, moving of munitions, stuff like this, that's all going to be in that separate internet, that separate, you know, skiff. That's where all that stuff is. That's where all the receipts are from that. And those guys know dang well that if they start going in there and pulling those receipts out and showing stuff, you know, they're going to get, you know, an Edward Snowden style treatment. I mean, that's basically what's going to happen. You're not a whistleblower if you're breaking your TSSCI agreements. It's just they're mutually exclusive.
Right. And you know, an Official Secrets Act OSA in Britain, same thing. So if you're ex MI5, ex GCHQ, or whatever, there's plenty of those running around in the media as well. They're not allowed to talk about all the interesting stuff,
Right?
Just everything else on the periphery, and it's so frustrating. So you have they can't really be classed as journalists, because you can't be a journalist and have no-go areas, and all of these guys have massive no-go areas. So they're kind of being disingenuous to their audience. And in a way, they really need to recuse themselves from, if they're just doing fishing and tourism, cultural stuff, anti-woke stuff, fine. And there's plenty of guys I know that are vets that don't necessarily cover their operational subject expert areas of subject whatnot. And that's fine. But don't inject yourself into things that you actually have a hand in. And you're completely gaslighting your audience. Gaslighting meaning putting a gaslight out so everyone's looking over there when they should be looking at the thing that's important. That's gaslighting. And I just see so much of that. Let's finish. Let's round this one out. I'm going to take a break with the network in a moment, but I'll hand it back to you, Hesher. No more yellow cards. Let's see if we can make it to the end of the match.
All right. Well, there's only 2 minutes left, so that couldn't be more than 20 acronyms. We'll see how it goes.
LinkedIn. So that was the first thing I did. I went to his LinkedIn page. First thing I noticed was all of his bona fides were in place. He has all the UAS training from USASOC and everything else. And so I said, okay, at least the guy knows what he's talking about with drones. That was a very rough dig into the guy. But my issue was I couldn't validate or verify any of this information. And I told him that. And how I responded to him was in a subsequent email. I said, this is obviously a very big deal, but I don't have anything to verify this information with. Talking about gravitic propulsion systems without evidence just makes me another UFO talking head. Like, I'm not going to go on my social media page and start talking about UFOs and anti-gravity systems.
Hold on. Time out. But that's exactly what you're freaking doing.
Yeah. You just did it.
Honestly, you can't make this up. This is like, if this was a comedy sketch, this is like Monty Python. This would be a great basis for a comedy sketch. The dialogue's already been written. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
And he said, can I get on Fox News Contact on Signal as well as Sean's show? Hegseth would be good too. That was his last message to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
The thing is, what is a gravitic propulsion system?
To be honest with you, it is a fancy term you're going to find in science fiction. You won't find it in any, as far as I know, you won't find this in any kind of official manual or scientific research. This is all science fiction. So, but what struck me is his use. What strikes me now, not then, but what strikes me now is his use of a very specific term that nobody else call it. If you asked me, I would say an anti-gravity propulsion system. That's how I would describe it, because I don't know this stuff. He said gravitic propulsion system.
We looked that up last night too, and all we could find was same thing, science fiction type stuff. But no matter where you're watching.
All right.
Wow.
They didn't even find Ashton Forbes. He talks about this stuff all the time. The guy who thinks the the Malaysian flight thing.
He's weighed in on. He's endorsed this interview.
Of course he would, because that's he knows what that means. Yeah.
Gravitic propulsion systems. So they're saying, "Hey man, I'm not going to respond to this. This is a UFO stuff, but I'm doing it now on the Sean Ryan show." Honestly, it's almost funny. I mean, at some point. So here's Mr. Shumat's follow up here, Sam Shumat. So he released this on Twitter just now, and basically he's saying that he's changed the story, Hesher. So this was last night. I think he's posted this 10 hours ago or so. Clint Russell's been doing a pretty good job following some of the talking points on this. Liberty Lock Pod. I think Clint is one of the better podcasters on this space. But so I tweeted here. I said the intel guy from the Sean Ryan show, Disinfo debacle, is now pushing out a new plot in the Vegas Tesla conspiracy. Eventually, they may get it right if they just keep adjusting the narrative. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So I've got that clip with us, and we'll play a couple minutes. So this is a revision of the narrative now. He's got a new story, and this is Sam Shumat. And basically, it's as we suspected it was from the beginning. Here, look at this.
So after I did the interview, a lot of people, nobody knew that I had the manifesto. I had to be very quiet for a day. So people were messaging me and they're like, have you heard of this guy? Have you seen this? Blah, blah, blah. And they didn't know I wasn't posting on it. People expect me to post on these relevant incidents like this, because just like I had posted on the New Orleans guy. So I was like being very quiet, because Sean was like, dude, you haven't told anybody, any other media you have this, right? I was like, no, nobody. I wasn't going to put it out on my own social media, because people would be like, dude, you made this up. I knew I couldn't handle this information on my own. So anyways, after I did the show and it blew up and people were like, holy crap, they knew who I was. And people on my Instagram page started telling me things. So I had a lot of people reaching out, telling me what they had talked to, but with their Green Beret buddies. One person reached out and told me they had a very close connection to members of the family, which I won't go into. But what I've learned since then, and I'm going to say allegedly because I don't have proof of this, but I've had 3 people tell me this. Allegedly, Matt Livelsberger changed his meds several days prior to this incident. I don't know what several days means, but what I was told by several people who I value their input and are close to the situation told me that he was on antipsychotic medication. He had changed his medications, and they said that basically something crazy happened and he became suicidal. So people ask me, is he sane? Was he whatever? Well, I've gotten 2 stories on this, and I want people to hear me very carefully on this, because I am saying 2 different things at the same time. What I have heard from family members, and this is what I put out. I think I put this out on the Sean Ryan podcast, because I heard this from, I saw this on social media. I have not personally talked to any family members. Let me make that clear. I saw on social media that members of his family had said that this was not normal for him. He was very normal. He was very sane mind. His teammates were shocked. Everybody was shocked because he was not a crazy dude, whatever else. And that's what I knew. And then after the podcast, I found out that it was literally, he changed his medication within days of this event and something shifted. So if his family had not seen that within the days of this, he could have been acting very bizarre, very strange. And the manifesto that he wrote, along with these letters and everything else, the guy was clearly, and I will stick to this. His desire was to send a message. It wasn't to do a mass casualty event. It wasn't to screw anybody over. It was to make this message as prominent as possible. And I still believe that. He was not trying to blow up that tower, in my opinion. He was not trying to blow up the tower. He was not trying to kill a bunch of people. The dude, and I say this respectfully to his teammates. I say this respectfully to his family. The dude had a screw loose, okay? I'm not going to get into the labeling of him. I don't know what his situation was, but I believe that he had a psychotic break. Whatever he was.
Okay, so he even said, I'm telling you 2 different things at the same time. How do you know he even was on psychotic meds? We just have to take Sam Schumet's word for it, right? So again, take your word for it. So plot twist, plot change, take my word for it. So this is trust me, bro, journalism. What you do, if you're a journalist, you publish an article. You put the receipts in the article and you link to the source. If you have a document, you put a scan in a PDF and you let the people validate where the claim came from. If it's a member of the family that's an eyewitness and giving a piece of evidence, you quote them. Then they have to own it at that point. And the difference between saying this as gossip on a podcast or a live stream or something like that is when you publish it, it becomes real and you have to defend it. That's the difference between journalism that's just stream of consciousness type of consumable media and actual journalism. So look at what the Gray Zone does, for instance. They're usually coming with receipts. They'll publish documents. They've got testimonies, real quotes, plus analysis. That's what we try to do at 21st Century Wire as well, and a number of other really respectable independent media outlets do that. That puts meat on the bones of a story. Then you go onto the podcast, and then you talk about what you published. Okay, so so when Elon says we are the media, yay, we're the media. No, we're not the media. The media on X it's a train wreck. Okay, it's an absolute circus. And the people who have the biggest accounts are putting out unverified stuff. Half of it's manipulated or outright fake news. And they're getting paid thousands of dollars a month through X monetization by producing that viral news. And that's the problem. That's not real journalism. So that's my critique there. So Hesher, apparently he's got a screw loose, this special forces veteran who blew himself up with fireworks in his Tesla, trying to make a statement. He was trying to send a message. So like, I'm scratching my head, guys. What's the message? What's the message?
What is it? I mean, that's the billion-dollar question at this point. I mean, what did you achieve by this? You know, and then there's the whole like confusion about how his life ended too. We're told that he shot himself with a Desert Eagle. And we talked about this a little bit last night. If you want to put that on the screen right there, I've got a shot of what a Desert Eagle looks like. It's a massive pistol. And it comes in multiple calibers, but I think that it comes in 357 Magnum, 44 Magnum, but the one that most people are interested in is the 50 caliber Action Express round, which is not a very common thing for someone to commit suicide with. This is the type of weapon that if you were to, if one was to put it to one's own head and squeeze that trigger, you're, like Ruckus pointed out last night, it's one of the few guns that is probably going to make it so that you can't even have dental identification done on that body. And that is just a little sus in and of itself, I think. And
we got lucky, Hesher. The dude's ID survived everything, so we know it was him.
Right. Yeah. He's got a 9/11 style ID. Just a little bit burned on the edges. It's all good. And kills himself somehow before lighting off the fireworks display inside of the Cybertruck, which also doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's possible that somebody would get off their meds and rent a Cybertruck and go to Trump Tower, even if they're a Trump supporter, and try to send a message that nobody will understand and then kill themselves horribly in a head exploding sort of way, somehow before lighting off their firework petards and all this stuff. I mean, just laying out that little snippet of timeline, like, I'm sorry, I have a really hard time with that. Like, okay, someone changed their meds and this happened, maybe, but I'm not going to believe it from this media and from these law enforcement officers and these intel agencies and these podcaster soft influencer guys.
Yeah. So the gun melted and beyond recognition. Obviously, can't pull any prints off it, but the passport or the military ID survived the incineration, so that's helpful, right? Shades of 9/11, and just burnt a little bit on the edge, almost as if it's the standby props department at the production company. I used to work in standby props. I did a couple of big films, and that's the sort of stuff we do, like make documents look old, burn it, but not too much, so it's legible on camera. Like when I was working in the film industry, that's the sort of stuff they do. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, like a form
of. He wanted to send a message. We still don't know what the message really was. Was it because I thought I had heard that this email that's being passed around with these two, that there might have been two separate things. At first, there was like a fake manifesto that people were talking about, and then now the Sean Ryan thing is the acceptable one, apparently. But what is the message that they're trying to make here with this bizarre suicide with fireworks? I mean, unless the guy, I mean, it is 2025 now, guys. Maybe he was like, well, okay, I'm going to kill myself, but lots of people have done this, and it just goes away in the news. How can I make this the most spectacular, eyeballs on me? How do I get my message out? Maybe he asked ChatGPT, what's the best way for me to go out with a bang? And maybe ChatGPT or Grok said, well, it is New Year's, and maybe they're the reason they threw in the fireworks. I have no idea.
What's the biggest takeaway in the public domain in terms of Las Vegas Tesla? What's the biggest takeaway from it? What's the biggest conclusion from it? The biggest
Teslas
thing,
are pretty tough.
That's it. Ruckus, you've done it. That's exactly the biggest, at the moment, that is the biggest conclusion that's in the public consciousness, is that Teslas are impervious to car bomb explosions, right? And that Teslas are totally safe, and the cyber trucks are the bomb. No pun intended. That's the biggest takeaway. So I'm just saying that's a fact.
Another great bonus for Elon was he was able to come out and say, oh, anyone out there who's pointing out, oh, these things can drive themselves, or they can be hacked, they can be driven remotely, anything. Like, a lot of people were pointing that out, us included. But Elon came out right away within 24 hours and said, oh, I looked at the data on that, and that vehicle did not drive itself there. Okay, we'll just take your word for it, Elon. And I guess that means in perpetuity, anytime something happens with a Tesla, and people start saying, well, maybe the auto drive was on, or maybe somebody was remote controlling it, you're going to have Elon post on X and say, nah, I checked the server logs, guys. You got to let that little theory go. It's like, is this going to be a trend? Is this the beginning of a trend?
Yeah. So two important points there. Also, dash cam, are there any internal cams in the Cybertruck? Where's that data? Does that data get uploaded to a cloud, central server? Who has access to that? Of course, now the government has an issue with self-driving cars. Is that self-driving cars that can be hacked or programmed can be used as UAV or drone car bombs, basically the equivalent of. And so that's a security issue for all of so the new technology brings in a new security issue. And government
deal with the VBIDs.
With VBIDs, yeah, the government has to be involved to prevent VBIDs from happening. So to be able to shut that down. So we need to. So this is also a discussion that came in on the back end of San Bernardino in 2015. And it was the big national debate with Tim Cook panicking. Whoa, the government wants backdoor access into the iPhone, iOS, because we need to look in these terrorists' phones, and we need to do it now. And would give us the encryption keys, says the government. That was the national discussion on the back end of San Bernardino. And guess where the solution came from? Israeli intelligence stepped forward and said, we'll do it. Don't worry. We can handle that for you. So you don't have to get your hands dirty with your constitution. Americans, Israelis will take care of it. So that's interesting. I wonder if we'll have something similar coming up here in the tech discussion. I'm telling you that we look at all of these things. For all of these events, you study the event, you study the reaction, you study the aftermath, and then you look for, and this is the important point, what policies are going to be implemented or changed as a result of said event, said spectacle, said high-profile mass shooting, domestic terror event, ISIS-inspired attack. So that's the really important question. That's what you should all, to our audience, that's what you should all be concerned with. That is the number one concern of you as the audience with any of these events, is not to get too obsessed with the gory details, although they're interesting and you want to find out the truth. What policies or legislation are being pushed on the back end of the event, or what new things are going to be implemented as a result of the event of event. So as journalists or independent analysts or whatever, that's what I'm interested in. That's what my colleagues here on the show, Hesher and Ruckus, are also interested in. We're looking at the whole spectrum. And we're actually interested in the end product more than anything, because that's what's going to affect you wherever you're sitting. So I'll give you another example. The Detroit underwear bomber. Okay. Now, if that happened today in 2024, the Q crowd, the Patriot podcaster crowd, they're going to be focused on the fact that the underwear bomber, the Detroit underwear bomber, was a Muslim. He was a Muslim, and he had a bomb rigged up to his underwear. It didn't go off. It's kind of a difficult one. And that's what they would be obsessed with. But when that happened, I think it was 2010 or something like that. I can't remember the year, sometime around there. And when that happened, We weren't interested in that. No. We were interested in what was going to come in terms of security requirements at airports because of the underwear bomber. And the underwear bomber was used to introduce the full body scanner in American airports with the TSA, DHS, federal government. And guess which company had the contract for the full body scanner? The company run by none other than DHS head Michael Chertoff. Great payday. It's great business if you can get it, folks. And it was funny because the underwear bomber, I forgot his name. You think he was Nigerian, Muslim. Father was a banker. He boarded the aircraft in Amsterdam, if I'm not mistaken. Details are hazy, but I think he boarded the aircraft in Amsterdam, and he boarded without a passport. Do you know anybody that's boarded an international flight without a passport? No, and he had a handler with him. We don't know the name of the handler, but that's what eyewitnesses said. So is that a shady event? Yep, it's pretty shady. But what came on the back end of that is what's important. So this is how we're trying to get our listeners and our audience for years to educate them to look at what are the implications of said event. Where do they want to herd you? What corner do they want to herd you in? So just quickly we'll go back to New Orleans, but just to round out Vegas, this came out. Daniel Davis, who is a phenomenal analyst and a podcaster, Daniel Davis, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, Deep Dive is his podcast. He put this out, I think, before anybody, or one of the first. This was another view of the Cybertruck, and he's saying driver sitting upright, so not slouched over from suicide, right? From the firearm, so couldn't have killed himself and then set the bomb off. I mean, that's a ridiculous scenario in itself, right, Hesher? I mean, so it's like,
yeah, a little bit of a chicken and egg process there, right? Like you're gonna kill yourself and then set off a bomb. How does that work? And again, that weapon, especially if it was 50, I don't think that the remains would be sitting upright before the explosion happened.
So what have we got here? This is back to New Orleans, Hesher, right?
Yeah, this particular one is just meme levels showing that the connections there between Ryan Ruth as well as the Bourbon Street guy and Matt. So there's all three of their pictures there, and all Fort Bragg related. Isn't that interesting?
And two of those are Ukraine related. I don't know about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from New Orleans, but Ruth and Matthew, they're connected to Ukraine. Both spent time in Ukraine doing, illegal off the books activities, mercenary activities in Ukraine. Ruth was a recruiter, and he was raising money. He was kind of doing PR for the Pentagon or the CIA or something. So he visited and stayed overnight at Fort Bragg like 100 times or something crazy, as they said here. And that's not suspicious, is it, Hesher?
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, here's just a couple more things too. I have the full LVMPD full, presser. I don't know if we want to watch that or not, but basically someone set up some of the takeaways from this.
Hold that till after the break. Let's get into this. Ladies and gentlemen, great discussion so far. We're talking about New Orleans and also the Las Vegas Tesla strange event. So both these happen on the 1st of January. I'm here with Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, and also Adam Ruckus Clark, both on the Alternate Current Radio. Hesher is the host of the Boiler Room at ACR, and also Ruckus, the Daily Ruckus, is his podcast. Fantastic programs, both of them. So we're unpacking some of the difficult details of these crazy events. What we're going to do right now is take a break with Alternate Current Radio. And when we come back, we're going to get into some of those details, because now we're organized. We've sort of set the scene for you guys. And what comes next is let's just do some serious unpacking of this. And by the end of this discussion, we want to make sure that you've got a good grip on what's been going on. So I am your host, Patrick Henningsen. This is the Sunday Wire. Enjoy the music of our friend Joseph Arthur. We'll be back in just a few.